Welcome to another episode of Carib Money Report. I am Kimberly Ramkalawan. This week, China deepens relations with the Caribbean and Latin America, while the OECS Trade Council meeting yields a renewed call for integration and operationalizing of its economic and customs union. All this and more in this week's Carib Money Report. China and Celac met this week in Beijing with President Xi Jinping promising some $9 billion in developmental funding to the region. It's our top story in the news this week. Against the backdrop of reciprocal tariff standoff between China and the United States, Caribbean and Latin American countries met in Beijing this week. There, President Xi Jinping made the remarks at the opening ceremony of the fourth ministerial meeting of the China-Celac Community for Latin American and Caribbean States Forum, assuring China's support to the region.
We will provide a 66 billion RMB yuan credit line to support LAC countries' development.
Facts have shown that China and the LAC countries are advancing hand in hand as a community with a shared future. This community of ours is founded upon equality, powered by mutual benefit and win-win.
Some 66 billion yen or $9.18 billion in developmental loans will be dispersed in the region, while it pledged to work closer with Latin America and the Caribbean through several solidarity programs.
There are no winners in tariff wars or trade wars. Bullying or hegemonism only leads to self-isolation. In the face of seething undercurrents of geopolitical and bloc confrontation, and the surging tide of unilateralism and protectionism, China stands ready to join hands with our LAC partners to launch 5 programs that advance our shared development and revitalization and contribute to the China-LAC community with a shared future.
Following his address, attendees are said to have adopted a joint action plan covering cooperation through till 2027. Apart from a promise of continued financial support to the region, President Xi shared that it was China's plan to give visa-free travel to 5 countries from the region. Moving the region to being more technologically driven in the business sphere looks at keeping abreast with the latest developments in the sector, and with artificial intelligence dominating the way systems operate, the industry came under scrutiny as experts in the field converged in Port Spain this week for the second Carbon Spectrum Management Conference. There to welcome the telecommunication players was Trinidad and Tobago's recently appointed Public Administration and Artificial Intelligence Minister Dominic Smith, who linked its management to maintaining the region's digital autonomy in his maiden speech.
Let's address regional harmonization as crucial because as a region of diverse nations, unique geographical challenges, and I believe shared ambitions, the Caribbean stands to gain immensely from a unified approach to spectrum management. The harmonization is not merely an aligning of frequencies. It's about creating a seamless environment for cross-border communication, attracting what has become very crucial for us, investment opportunities, and enabling economies of scale for our operators. It reduces interference as well as ensures efficient resource use and fosters a more integrated telecommunications industry and market.
Part of the commercial challenges often faced by regulators and service providers is deciding when the changeover to new technology becomes necessary to your landscape, something that came up in several discussions at the conference.
What attachments do you put in those licenses, for example, in terms of coverage of speeds? How do you think about the right balance of how much to push for the new when you have something that is already working?
Yes, I think it would be based off of the regulator, but deployment of the networks ultimately comes down to the ISP themselves. And so the regulator needs to make the ISP feel, have them interested and making sure that they have an environment that they want to roll new tech out to.
Spectrum management deals with the regulating and allocating of radio frequency spectrums to ensure efficient and fair use by various services and users. According to host this year, Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the meeting is said to have reaffirmed the region's commitment to coordinated spectrum management, evidence-based planning, and meaningful collaboration with stakeholders to unlock digital growth and resilience across the Caribbean. Policy changes in the way members of the OECS does business must be revamped. The statement calling for new strategies includes the integration of its operationalizing of its Economic and Customs Union in the face of a changed global trade outlook. Grenada's Trade Minister made the comment during the 6th Council of Trade Ministers meeting this week.
In the area of trade policy, and particularly the operationalization of the Economic Union as a single economic and financial space. The coordination and harmonization of OECS trade policies is an imperative to strengthening our capacity to confront, address, and overcome the endogenous consequences and exogenous shocks that we continue to encounter.
But more to this is political will, something Director General Didacus Jules explained would work at all fronts of trade, particular among member states themselves.
This moment demands more than analysis. It demands strategic clarity. It demands political courage. And above all, it demands action, not in silos, not in speeches, but in coordinated regional response and resolve. First, we must confront the hard truth. We must complete the architecture of the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union. This is not the time for half measures. The Customs Union, the free circulation of goods, and the free trade in services must become a reality, not in theory, not in communiques, but in trucks crossing borders, boats crossing the sea, services crossing screens, and capital transversing the islands.
Apart from these, the gathering of trade ministers outlined its plan to go before the World Trade Organization as well as prepare for CARICOM's 60th Council of Trade and Economic Development meeting later this year. And some good news for Trinidad and Tobago's upstream sector. Perenco has announced that it has found gas following the successful drilling of the Onyx well. Releasing the statement this week, the Anglo-French company said the drilling of the well and the sidetrack in the eastern part of the Onyx field led to the find of significant columns of natural gas in two separate geological compartments. The Onyx field is an undeveloped gas discovery located within the TSP license in a water depth of 180 feet between the Pui and Teak fields off Trinidad's southeast coast. The news comes 1 week after EOG Resources announced it discovered oil in the Barrel area located within the same TSP fields located also in the southeast of Trinidad. Perenco's TNT General Manager, Gregor de Corsales, said, "I'm very proud of the successful results of the Onyx wells. Objective was to prove sufficient gas reserves to unlock field development. The well's findings are a testimony to the hydrocarbon potential which remains in the TSP acreage and highlights Perenco's commitment to provide future supplies of natural gas to Trinidad and Tobago." TSP is a joint venture between Perenco TNT, the operator Heritage Petroleum Company, and Natural Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago. Some good news for the oil and gas sector in Trinidad and Tobago. We take our first break now. Stay with us.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Welcome back. This week, we see several new players making their presence known among top players in regional stock exchanges. It's now time for market trends. The Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange recorded a volume of 318,884 put-through transactions, valued at $2,117,762 TT dollars for the week ending May 16th. The top three securities traded for the week were NCB Financial Group Limited, Massey Holdings Limited, and National Flour Mills Limited. Three market indices advanced from 0.77% to 1.05%, and one index declined by 0.08%. A total of 8 securities advanced, with Scotiabank Trinidad and Tobago increasing the highest by 7.46%, alongside National Gas Limited by 5.72%. There were declines in 13 securities, in which one Caribbean Media and Calypso Macro Index Fund decreased the most by 10% and 5.77% respectively. Overall, 8 stocks remain unchanged. Moving across to Jamaica, where the JSE reported a sum of 82,671,737 units valued at 648,859,495 Jamaican dollars traded for this week. Supreme Ventures Limited joined the top 3 securities traded for the week, along with Trans Jamaican Highway Limited and Wigton Energy Limited. A total of 27 stocks advanced, in which Margaritaville Turks Limited rose the highest by 19.14%, along with Cygnus Real Estate Financial Limited by 15.5%. There were declines in 34 securities, with Supreme Ventures Limited and NCB Financial Group Limited decreasing the most by 9.13% and 6.27% respectively. Overall, 4 stocks traded firm. In Barbados, its stock exchange recorded a volume of 52,236 shares, valued at 38,304 Barbadian dollars, traded on the regular market for this week. Together, the sum of Epley Carbon Properties Development and Value Funds SCC captured over 72% of the market, with 37,675 shares. The third top security traded for the week was Insurance Corporation of Barbados Limited, with 7,925 shares. Overall, 4 securities declined and 20 remain unchanged. The Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange market reported a sum of 5,157 shares, valued at 23,387 EC dollars, traded for this week. The top 3 securities traded for the week were TDC Limited, capturing 54% of the market, with 2,800 shares. The Bank of Nevis Limited with 1,689 shares, and St. Lucia Electricity Services Limited with 370 shares. Overall market activity resulted in 2 advances, 2 declines, and 2 securities remaining unchanged. Regional businesses doing their thing on the stock market. We take a short break at this time. Stay tuned.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Welcome back. We go back in time now for our This Week in History segment. May 13, 1998, then Jamaican Prime Minister P.J. Patterson took on the role as chairman of the G15 summit held in Cairo, Egypt that year. The G15, a group of developing countries that came together informally for the areas of investment, trade and technology. Simultaneous to the G15 was the G8, group of industrial nations also meeting for their annual summit in Birmingham, England. Patterson would make comments condemning the rich countries of the world for co-signing them to what he called the graveyard of penury, something that would be met with much opposition back at home. At the same time, he would also share it was necessary for the group to intensify dialogue with industrialized nations, yet lamenting the impact globalization was having on developing nations. citing while it promoted the concepts of good governance, human rights, labor standards, and environmental protection. He dissuaded the group from subjective interpretation to become a guise or pretext for protectionism and extraterritorial application, purely domestic legislation. He reiterated that developing nations, too, also had rights and had to be fully prepared to enforce them within the World Trade Organization whenever they are breached by the developed countries so as to maintain the benefits for which they bargained. He also warned the group to not allow electronic commerce to expose their societies to money laundering or other antisocial and criminal activities, to avoid external dictates which would simply result in a diversion of appropriate funding from social and rehabilitative programs that would increase the number of people vulnerable to poverty. Nevertheless, still noting that it had one positive aspect. It had brought the countries closer together, with an opportunity to contribute to the future economic security of all countries. Prime Minister Patterson, in making his speech, pledged to create a new era of dynamism and push for South-South cooperation ahead of hosting the 9th leg of the G15 summit in Jamaica the following year. Another page in our region's business and trade history. Stay with us.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Carib Money Report. I am Kimberly Ramkalawan. Join us next week when we look at all things Caribbean business here on Carib Money Report.